about. All right. I think we're ready to begin.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. I am Callico Vargas, and I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience coming in and starting to teach here at Colorado State University, Pueblo, and sort of lessons that I've learned culturally that apply to my self-care and to, I feel like, the way that I teach in my classroom today compared to when I started. So I like to say, like Miley Cyrus, I came in like a wrecking ball. I came in like a wreck. I came in thinking, this is going to be great. My syllabus is on par. My students are going to love this. I can't wait to get in the classroom and start teaching. What actually happened was my students, a couple of them spoke up that day and they said, what in the world are you doing? This is way too much work. You have overloaded online and we're doing Zoom and it's COVID, we're stressed. And I thought to myself, what on earth? I had to go pound it out with myself because I never heard students speak up and talk to their professors the way that a couple of my students did. I wasn't used to that in my college experience. In my college experience, students just kind of did what they were told without questioning and moved forward through the process of learning and were there to take whatever the professors wanted to give. And so it led me on a journey. Whoops. And I did go back and forth and think, oh, I don't know if this is what I want to do now. I don't know if this is what I signed up for. It's definitely not what I expected based on this first class. Since I teach social work, I decided to fall back on what I did know, which were my social work skills and values. And I looked at how could I model being a social worker to my students through this, what I saw was a difficulty and kind of hard for me to swallow. I thought first about my service as a value in social work. And I started wondering, how do I serve my students, which was a different take than when I came into the classroom thinking, I can't wait for my students to hear what I have to say and to learn from me. So that was my first little move in my thought process. Then I started looking at what my students were going through and the social justice issues that were prevalent back in 2020 with COVID, a lot of trauma responses, feeling like things were out of your control, a lot of fear, chaos in the lives of people from a new way of living that was kind of thrust upon them instead of chosen, living in silos with a lot of anxiety, depression, and then on top of that, racial tension and division. And so I realized that was a lot that my students were going through, as well as my colleagues and even myself. But especially when I'm thinking about how to serve my students, that became really important. So I started thinking about the value of integrity and how am I going to do the right thing by my students? How do I address the things that they're going through and meet their needs and still teach in a classroom setting on Zoom? I thought about my competency areas, and most of my research and passion have been on trauma and resilience, and I was a really big passionate person on mental health. So I started thinking about, okay, how can I use the things that I do know and have done before and do it well to the best of my ability as I'm serving students. So those all came into play, and I started being more sensitive to the things my students were going through and what their needs might be, and thinking about ensuring that they had dignity and worth. That meant empowering them and letting them know they were important and that I valued them and that I saw and heard them. And then that importance of the human relationship, it became a goal of mine to develop the relationship with the students and for them to help develop the relationships with each other. So even though we were separated and going online to school, we could at least still have like breakout rooms or deep conversations or do check-ins to see how people were. So as I began to engage in building those trusting, healthy relationships, I also started learning more about them and their cultures and where they came from, and that was really cool. But I also started to learn more about my own culture, and part of that happened eventually through one way was comparing my cultures with their culture and like the things that I was used to in my own personal life compared to what they've been used to. And I started going outside of that and reading some more books. I took a class that was for anti-racism for white clinicians. And that was eye-opening because that was when I actually started to get a language that gave me words to describe my culture and my ways of being. So one of the words that I came upon that I had somebody share with me before, they thought I was a perfectionist, and I debated that and said, no, I don't care if things are crooked, and I'm a klutz, I make mistakes, I make messes. Then what I came to learn through this class was that it's actually more about focusing more and pointing out deficits, more about being less appreciative, and that if you make a mistake, you are a mistake. And that I could relate to, and I thought, maybe I am a little bit of a perfectionist. And then I started realizing when I had been a student and I was in my master's program, I would rewrite and rewrite and rewrite papers till I would finally just say to myself, this is good enough. I could keep rewriting forever. I have to just settle for this being good enough. Can anybody relate to perfectionism in the room or online a little bit? So I kind of started viewing perfection as an enemy because it's pretty much something that no one can attain. I'm never going to be perfect. As many times as I rewrite a paper, there's probably always going to be a way to improve. And I just started seeing it as kind of a threat. It was not something that was helping me be healthy. It was something that was pushing me towards exhaustion more than anything. Oh. So defensiveness was another thing that came up in the wording. And I really felt like being a social worker helped me to be less defensive because I was open to listening and having more of an open, non-judgmental mind. That's my training. However, what I did realize is that when it came to me thinking I knew what I was doing in the classroom and teaching the way I've been shown to teach in my own experiences, that I felt like a bit defensive when my students didn't like what I was trying to do. And I felt like, oh, so maybe I do have some defensiveness. And in that defensiveness, I was seeing that it was kind of like me trying to say, this is who I am and what I do, and this is who you are and what you do, which is oppressive. It's kind of pushing somebody back. And so I'm picturing a little bit of a battle here and military defensiveness. And if you look at it from that way, being defensive, you can be protective of yourself, but also pushing somebody else out and kind of oppressing the others. I don't know why I keep hitting that. Another way that it showed up, another word that I got from that class was power hoarding, and that's not sharing power. It's keeping the power for yourself and being kind of afraid of losing that power. And that's what I determined had happened when I came in with my thoughts and my ideas about the way that the class would look and how it would run, that it was really all my thinking and I wasn't sharing that opportunity with others. And what that was going to take away was collaboration, getting other people's perspectives and ideas, and an opportunity for growth and learning. Now I have to go to Mentimeter. I think I have it. Okay. So if you'd like to join me on Mentimeter, there's a barcode, or you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code 11304888. You should be able to scan it in with your phone if you use the QR code. I didn't bring my phone. That's okay. You could join us in conversation. It's not letting you in. Am I in presenter mode? Some people are giving me a thumbs up. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here. We can see. We're logging in
You're logging in?
to the Mentimeter. Yeah, can you?
Okay.
I see the code. I'll log in right now. I was having a problem with the baby, but I'm here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Is everybody seeing this screen perfectionism? How does that hurt? Thank you, Bernadita. So here's where we can start getting into the nitty gritty and talking, having some conversation. Do you know that if they light up bigger, it's been said more than once? I just learned that.
Word clouds. Oh, too many words in that one.
Sets up for senses of failure.
It looks like a.
Hey.
Sets up for senses of faith. You can always.
I wonder who put that in.
I don't know.
Wow, we're still going? Or is it just moving?
No, that's every time somebody adds one.
So judgment's really big. Does anybody want to comment on anything that you see up there? How perfectionism is harmful to ourselves and our students?
Well, I personally, I will take ownership of sets up for senses of faith. But failure, because granted perfectionism, especially in our culture, we strive for always being the best, and it's always a competition who can be one up, who can outdo and outlast. And if you break it down, ultimately, you're really setting your own self up for failure, because perfection is one thing that you will never fully obtain. And so in the end, you didn't make it. And you take ownership of that, typically misplaced in the sense of, I didn't put enough time, I didn't want it enough, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. So that's where I really see perfectionism as setting individuals up for failure to begin with.
Now that's good instead of deficit thinking. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Good. Anybody else?
But exhausting. It is. It's hard to say when. It's easy to ruminate about it. It's tricky though, because I think striving for excellence is a good thing. But the idea of perfectionism is the unattainable, and so trying to separate those two. I think when you're feeling good, when you're in a good headspace, you feel confident in what you're doing, it's a little easier to do that. It's funny, because today I was feeling a little overwhelmed, and I'm like going into the cafeteria, and I'm like, I want to eat all the bad foods right now. And I know that that's just gonna make it worse. And so if my head's not in the best space, perfectionism is like. Right, it just eats you up,
Yeah.
opposed to that better version of strive for excellence, and say when,
Right.
and not be exhausted.
And you actually triggered a thought in me, was how does. How does this idea of perfectionism impact our own sense of self-efficacy? You know, both academically and for students as well. If we have this idealized goal that is unattainable and evidence suggests that we can't achieve that, I'd have to think that internally that would negatively impact my confidence to have the skills, the resources, and the support system to be able to even strive for excellence with enough times of never reaching my ideal perfections.
Yeah.
So,
Also striving for perfection is to be perfect, is, there's that deficit thinking, within yourself. But I think there's that danger where you start to, kind of export that.
Yes.
It really wasn't me that kept me from being perfect. It was someone else, or something else. So the deficit thinking expands.
Yeah.
To, a lot of different spheres that maybe had nothing to do with whatever the issue at hand.
Good point. I was thinking about when, a couple of things. So Dr. Yasu, you said, I picture, what you said made me think of a hamster on a hamster wheel, just going and going and going and being exhausted, but not really getting anywhere. And then, when Laura shared, I was thinking about kids in her room chanting, good enough, good enough. And thinking to myself, how many times, especially in like therapy, have I heard people say, my biggest struggle is I'm never good enough. And if you're never good enough, it's because you're comparing yourself to something that is not attainable.
I can ask our online folks, because they're probably not able to hear,
Can you all hear us online?
ask for their contribution.
Can hear. This is
Would you
Yvonne.
like to add
Yes.
anything?
I'm just jumping in, so listening, but I definitely can feel a lot of the same sentiments and resonate with some of what's going around. So this has just been a good reminder so far.
Good, thank you, Emily.
Yeah, I think, kind of an example of this deficit thinking, I don't know if it is exact, in this particular situation is about perfectionism, but I had a conversation earlier with a student, an international student, and she was talking about one of her classes, that she wasn't really she was having trouble understanding some of the concepts in this particular class. And I said, well, have you talked with your instructor yet? Still early enough in the semester, if you wait too long, get too far behind, it's just gonna get worse. And she goes, we were talking about, some of the points that she could bring up with her instructor. And she was a little bit confused, and she looked at me, and she goes, I can do that? And I said, yes. And so we talked more about that, and she had the sense that if she went to her instructor and said, I'm not understanding, that her instructor would take that as a criticism of their instruction. And I said, well, hopefully not, I don't know the instructor, so I really can't say yes or no whether they might perceive it that way. But I say, and it's, you're not being artificial about this, is real. This is part of the difficulty here for her is the cultural difference. And, you know, have that as part of your conversation, where you can talk about, well, I'm from such and such a country, this is my experience. And, you know, I'm just not familiar with my own cultural and educational experience because we're working in the US. And, you know, make that part of the conversation, so it's not about, I'm trying to blame you because I don't get this,
Right.
you know. But it's some of that deficit thinking, I'm not understanding because it's my fault.
Yeah.
And then trying to, like I said, trying to kind of export this to create the scenario that maybe the instructor will think, oh, you're being critical of me, you're criticizing my instruction. Where it's neither one of those things.
Right.
You know, and, you know, I tried to, you know, explain to her too, I said, you know, instructors are just people, we need feedback. And sometimes we don't do what we think we're doing in terms of effective instruction. And so getting that feedback from our students helps us be better teachers. So, you know, you're helping yourself and perhaps also helping your instructor and probably everybody else in class, because it's a good chance somebody else is maybe feeling much as you are.
Yes. One person has a question, a lot of people probably.
Yeah, and, but, you know, that whole thing about the deficit thinking, I mean, that's exactly where she was.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's either her fault or, you know, now, you know, somebody thinks I'm criticizing them, and it's not really, that's not any of that stuff. So hopefully, you know, she'll be able to go talk with her instructor and have a conversation to kind of work some of that out. I think part of her cultural experience was, I can't tell my instructors I don't understand. Because that's just not going to be acceptable. And she was like, I can do that. Well, I hope so. I hope so.
You gave her some good advice.
Something in the chat there.
Check the chat. Thanks for sharing that story. It's important for instructors to hear that and solicit feedback from students.
Agreed. What comes to mind to me is a lot of students fearing being seen in a negative light, being seen, viewed with that deficit, like, what do you mean you don't get it? And as opposed to, oh, this is an opportunity to, you're showing me that you care about learning it, as opposed to, you're showing me that you don't get it and that's a bad thing. It's like, no, you're investing in your education and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I always tell my students that there aren't really mistakes, they're just, it's just a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, you know, okay, fine, let's just figure out how to do this, you know, differently or do better, not perfectly.
I mean, I was gonna say, that's part of perfectionism, right? It's an absolute, it's a black and white, it's you get it or you don't, and there's not that gray area that I'm rooting for. And that's a real negative consequence of then I'm afraid to explore and make mistakes. And our model and Laura helped me teach our research methods and stats class was mess up with joy. Because if you can't make mistakes in here, you are not gonna learn because there's plenty to make. And I'm gonna lead by example. It's like, I think I did that wrong. Let me count. Oh yeah, no, that's calculated wrong. Yeah, you know, and then it's like, let's try it again and again. And that makes for safer learning spaces when it's like, it is totally okay to make mistakes. It's expected. Especially better in the simulation lab before you're out in the real world. That's the feature, right? Make
So
mistakes.
same
Yeah.
place to make mistakes, don't say simulation. What happens here, Stacy, is what can you learn from, what can you take away from it? And I tell them I'm going to learn from students as much as they're going to learn from me. So it's mutual respect and let's be open.
Yeah.
So creating that environment where everyone feels comfortable, I think is important in every teaching encounter.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Michaela?
I wanted to say how I think that perfectionism kind of stimulates this ideal of a trap mentality. For instance, you're scared to go ahead and pursue something because you don't want to fail.
Yeah.
That kind of creates that cycle, and then that becomes like further.
I think I There was a meme I saw at one point about how perfectionism is the enemy of getting started or something.
Yes.
It's kind of freezes you. Good, thank you. Anybody online have anything that you wanted to add before I switch to the next slide?
No, just really appreciating the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear us okay? Yes, okay. So we kind of started touching on this, but how can we promote learning through making mistakes and being okay? I think, is this another one that we can comment on online?
I think it's coming up if you refresh the Mentimeter page
Refresh it?
for, on our end.
Oh, on your end? Okay.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if I can write in it. I see the question, but I don't think I can write. Can you all write?
You guys do.
Can't write in it either.
Talk through, what, Yvonne?
I was like, I can't write in it either. I'm looking at both the Mentimeter and I'm logged into it as well, and I can't write anything either.
Okay, maybe we're just supposed to talk then through this one. So we already
She
kind
did
of
that on
started.
purpose. And she's okay with it.
Then it's not a mistake.
I'm honestly just learning Mentimeter, so
It's a learning opportunity, right?
I think it's fun. We already kind of started down this path, but learning through making mistakes and making mistakes being okay. One thing in my classroom that I try to do is let students know that they can get feedback and then turn something back in and resubmit. So that if they are trying to accumulate more points, they aren't feeling like, and I tell them the grade is not the point of learning, the learning is the point of learning. So what else, what are you guys doing to promote that kind of learning?
Okay, so I have this idea, so I think kind of identifying early on in classes, the difference between the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, which I believe kind of aligns with perfectionism.
Yeah.
I think that would be really crucial because when you have a growth mindset, you're more likely to actually accomplish your goals and to go through with it because it's more about the process of learning rather than letting you get a grade or a score.
Process is important.
Yep, I don't get it yet. I always love that word yet. It's like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm not there yet.
Yes.
I'm in the weeds, help,
Mhm.
send a search party.
And that's another thing, right? I mean, I'm gonna reach out, whether it's your instructor or your classmates, like, you get it? I don't get it. Let's ask together that feels safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to be checked. And that's something that definitely working with you in your classroom as a student, even my experience was a lot of my peers were scared to admit that they didn't understand. They were scared to admit that, yes, we were in the weeds and we got left miles behind them, you know, but they didn't want to reach out. And as a student, I was always one of those, if you're afraid to ask, I will ask, because it's more important that you have the information and hopefully through me role modeling that, they will understand that the professor's not gonna bite my head off, so therefore they're not gonna get their head bit off, you know? And so I listen to my peers and be like, I have no idea what's going on. So, no, I'm like, okay, what, I'm lost, but what are you lost on? You know, tell me, you know, and then I'm like, okay, here I am, and literally, you know, she'd call on me, and I'd be like, you lost, I'm miles back in the weeds. I don't know, and every once in a while, I didn't even know how to ask the question, you
It
know?
was fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, just keep talking. I still don't know what you're saying. I don't know where you're lost. All right, now I've
Yes.
got it.
Yes, and the culture that developed in the classroom from that. More and more students seeing that she was engaging, that she welcomed that approach, and so others felt more comfortable. And even those that were still a little bit more, we use the term introverted, that were still more apprehensive, they were at least willing to reach out to their peers when I'm lost, do you mind? And so other peers would ask.
Yeah.
That's it. It's in line with what Emily's saying, creating a culture. And
Yep, yep.
But I think timing too, creating that culture early
Yes.
at the beginning. Notice that, more like a contract with the student that this is how we're going to operate. Because that's how we start, like I use simulation where it's formative. So if you make a mistake, it's okay, let's explore why you made that mistake and then let's see what you learned. And let's, sometimes we go and redo it, so let's do a retake, have the same scenario. And then they either watch an expert or one of the second, this is what you do. Or if they're comfortable doing it because there are other classmates there, then they repeat it just to build that confidence. And I say you don't need simulation that beat them. You have to have learned something to say, now I know. Maybe I thought, but now I know for sure. And I say, if you can't see that, then we need to talk. So we set that culture at the very beginning of every simulation experience. So I think that helps.
I think it probably depends on subject material too, because like in social work, we have so much gray area. So a lot of times when one student asks a question, I don't even answer first. I'll say, what do you guys think? Because there's like so many perspectives that you can have.
And I think that's really important to be valuing and seeking different perspectives, different answers, different strategies. And along with that, helping them develop, not just that, helping all of us develop evaluation skills of strategies and say, well, this one, okay. But this one seems to work a little bit better for what I need to do or want to do. It doesn't mean this one is terrible and needs to be tossed out, but this one works better for me without it becoming right, wrong, good, bad.
Yeah.
But what works best for my situation or, whatever the case might be. But part of that is, welcoming and opening up to those different ideas and those different strategies and then saying, okay, you have a way to figure out what works for you in this situation.
Good, yes. What is it?
Dr. Montoya wanted to speak. I'm sure you saw the hand up.
Ah, yes. Dr. Montoya.
Just going to say, and I think this kind of actually relates to what was just being said about evaluation too. And so I think one of the ways is during like peer evaluations and self-evaluations and those reflective points in class to really, I always encourage people to say, where are areas of growth, so instead of just saying, what are you doing wrong? Or I always say, what went well? What's something that the person did really well? But also what's an area of growth and development instead of saying, what did they do wrong? To really get in that mindset of we learn from our mistakes, right? It's okay. And this idea of part of the reason we evaluate is not to judge other people, but to see things that are working well and to find areas that are not and to try to understand why. So if you're evaluating someone, it's, and you're thinking about why isn't that working in this situation? Why is what they're doing not useful to me? If they're talking really, really fast, how does that affect my ability to listen to what they're saying? And so it helps you to reflect on, ideally, maybe you should slow down if you speak or whatever. And so I think that the reflective elements of both peer evaluation and self-evaluation really help promote this idea of learning through what goes well as what's not working.
I love that. I love that you ask both questions. And I think that that's something I'm going to try to implement more now. Thank you. You all can hear her well. All right, should we move forward? Defensiveness, what opportunities are lost when we react defensively?
There's the space for.
Oh, good, we can have responses. You can say whatever you really feel now. Good, so we can't hear feedback that could help us grow. We miss out on growth opportunities, the opportunity to have joyful interaction. Growth, it could damage a relationship or ways to improve. Create and or maintain safety in the classroom, relationship growth, sharing of knowledge, collaboration, and opportunities. We may miss out on just something new to learn. Sometimes they aren't critiquing us, but adding something to what we thought we already knew. Shutting down possible ideas and communication, creating barriers to learning. Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. Connection. The opportunity to see ourselves in another. That looks like some help. Okay. Thank you. Does anybody want to expand on anything for the defensiveness part? And what we might miss out on and opportunities might not.
I'd love to share.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I know we're talking in like teaching context, but I'm the youngest of 5. Very used to defensiveness with your siblings, you know?
Yeah.
And I've often found myself realizing that like when my sister is trying to say something and I'm getting defensive, like maybe she's actually giving me some new insight on something that I hadn't thought about. So it's something I'm working on, like learning to like pause and realize that like I only do this with my family where I'm like, I know better, you know, and I don't want to listen to them. And realizing like maybe there's stuff I can still learn. And so really like being open to other people's wisdom has been really powerful for me to embrace as somebody who, as the youngest, always feel like I'm proving myself, you know?
Yeah.
But like I don't need to. And like also it's in my teaching, I'm very aware of how much I have to learn and grow and learn from students and things. But with my siblings, I'm like, so learning to fight that defensive impulse has been really powerful for me.
Thanks for sharing that. I do think sometimes it's harder at home than it is in other spaces. There's something in the chat again. Oh, it's just help again.
I too am a last born, and I know that competitiveness. And my sister, who's the oldest, likes to push that competitiveness. I remember years ago, I drove out to, I don't know, some ski resort, right? They came out to ski and I was to join them. And I didn't even get a foot out of the door of the car and onto the ground before she said, I'm gonna beat your ass down the slopes. I'm like, it's nice to see you too, sister. You know, like it was on from the moment I opened my car door.
Oh. Woo.
Yeah.
I'm an oldest.
That's when you say, I'm already here, I've been waiting for you.
Took you long enough, I went and got coffee.
But that always trying to catch up makes a lot of sense. And in our family, we fostered a lot of that competitiveness. If I find that it can lead to a lot of defensiveness actually. So this one is, it's close to home.
I was thinking also like if we're modeling not being defensive, if we're not modeling not being defensive, then we're kind of missing an opportunity to help our students learn how to take advice or, you know, constructive feedback.
I was gonna say, it's hard to word it with that, the way the question's worded, but it was like, when I have had a defensive reaction and I can catch myself in it, it's like, oh, that That's not what we do, right? I'm doing it right now and I wish I were not being defensive, but owning it in the moment. And acknowledging it that not perfect, but I am being defensive right now and right, and I think when you were trying, when I first had to teach stats and research methods after 20 years of being away from it from graduate school, I was scared to death. I mean, I was the one crying at home at night, like, I'm not gonna be able to do it. And it was very challenging. And so I definitely had a lot of insecurities about, can I do this well? And I had to just lay it out there like, you know what? I can't explain all of that. It's just magic, all right? Right now, it's just mathematical magic. I can explain this, but I can't explain all of it, and that just had to be good enough, you know? And I think that was a saving grace, quite frankly, it's like, we're all gonna struggle to learn it together.
Yeah, I've had instances where in the middle of a lesson, I'm like, geez, I am doing such a bad job of explaining this. You don't understand it because I'm not understanding it. So I just had some time to say, you know what, this is not working. So we're just gonna stop right now with this.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna rethink how to teach this and we'll come back to it another day, but right now, this isn't working. And everybody's like, you were so right.
And that's why it's a great pedagogical tool, is to have our students try to teach each other.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, I know I'm getting it, or this is a great self-assessment. I am not getting it yet.
Yeah, it's like I said, the best way to learn something is to teach it, right? Yeah.
But there's a benefit to that, though, too, your admittance and the limits of your understanding or even the method that you're trying to convey that. For your students, especially those that are struggling with whatever it is you're trying to teach, it becomes a shared experience at that point in time. And you get it, and I use this in campus connections a lot, the opportunity for me to demonstrate what it's like to struggle and to struggle successfully. There's a difference between struggling and giving up or struggling and succeeding, right? You know, so even at your guys' level as professors, yes, students do look to you guys going, well, you know, you're supposed to have that. But I'm gonna be honest with you, that's your own opinion on yourself of where you're supposed to be at your level. Yeah, we look to you and we make assumptions about you guys going, yeah, you know. Oh, okay, you don't know. Cool. What do we do from here? That's an opportunity. And that is 100% an opportunity to go, here's what happens. Here's how we overcome. So, you know, I'm going to acknowledge, I'm going to admit, and then it becomes a shared experience. So we're going to lean on each other to go through this process. And I will tell you that makes a much more meaningful experience for your students. It makes, and I'm assuming it makes a meaningful experience for you guys as well.
Takes the pressure.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Humility is good for the soul.
Yes.
It's not always easy to fess up, but it's a relief.
Yes.
Release. And I have found some of the most disengaged students to be looking up like, wait, did you just say you don't know?
Yeah.
You're not getting it, and that it's like game on. Oh, well, maybe I can figure it out. It's like, yeah, bring it. What do you got? Let's figure this out together. It can be really a connection. And for some students, I think it can be a weapon. And I have to say there have been times over the 30 years that I've been doing this as a woman in front of the classroom. I am white, but as a woman in front of the classroom, I have had that the demeaning of I'm gonna demean you because there was this status change. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, wow. And so for minoritized individuals in front of the classroom, that kind of humility could be actually dangerous. Dangerous, I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but it can backfire in it, right?
Yeah.
It can be like, oh, that little.
And maybe in their own hands.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody is looking to stir the pot or cause harm, then that can be, that has happened anytime.
But I think I haven't had that particular type of experience, so I won't say it happens, a lot, but I mean, it has happened where I've just had to go. This isn't working, I'm sorry. What I thought is the way to teach this isn't working for you all, it's not working, we need to come back. So I haven't had that experience of somebody going, aha, but I'm wondering if you're honest and you're authentic about just simply saying, you know what, I need to step back from this. And if there is someone who wants to, play that kind of whatever power game there, if maybe others might rally around and go, hey, knock it off. This person's being real. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that happened in your case or whatever, but.
I think that can come from a couple of sources. In Callico's example that she's led with is, I've come into the room and here's my expectation. And so this is something that I experienced earlier in my career when I was the sage on the stage, and you should be listening to me. And so part of it is, yes, you've fallen from that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if I wasn't listening to students, if I wasn't open and receptive, then of course, it's like game on. You just showed some flaws, and I'm angry because you might not have been fair with that last assessment, and you didn't give me a chance to make it up. And who knows, in my earlier sarcastic days, I might have, made a snide remark and not thought a thing of it, because that's the love language I grew up with, and so you should tough it up too,
Or maybe it has nothing to do with you. They're bringing in all sorts of other stuff.
I mean, who
God
knows?
knows
So
where.
I'm more mindful of those things, especially right now. I'm learning how to play pickleball, and my pickleball instructor is snarky and got a lot of sense. And I'm like, that doesn't go over real well if I were really insecure right now. I'm a little vulnerable, but I can take it. But I mean, if I were 20, right? And I've invested a lot of money, you need to deliver on it. So I can see where that, and that's the thing of being empathetic with in our classrooms, right? It's like, yeah, and it's that challenge of, it's not about the grade, but the grade does matter because of the finances attached to it and the forward progress. But it's like, I feel like we're constantly battling to reframe that too. It's about the learning. And when the learning is there, the grades come. It's like, it's the byproduct, not the goal. Right. Sorry.
No, I related to what Dr. Yeo said because I'm teaching research for the first time this semester. And when I saw the class, I was like, well, I've never taught this class before, so I'm glad you all signed up. You got me.
It's an adventure.
And then I have to look at the psychology students, because I'm like, you guys do more research in that field than we do in social work. And so you tell me, like, I'll look for an answer in the room, and there's people from psychology in this little corner, and I'll say, what's going on over there? Anybody have anything to add before I switch and go forward? No? So anybody want to share some ways, and it looks like we're waiting for responses, that we can be more receptive to our students' ideas? And this is another one where I feel like we've already kind of started talking in that topic.
And really struggle for me to go total all of them, but if you would like the end of it, right,
I forget how to spell without correct. Like I'll look at something, I'll be like, did I spell that right?
Sometimes words just look this, it's like, I don't know. And they're words you use all the time, but it's like, I don't know, today, I don't know.
So I personally, started off my teaching career by bringing in my syllabus, and it was my syllabus and I was shoving it on the students, and now I bring in a syllabus and we go over it together and I ask for student input. And I try to be like listening to their suggestions or criticisms or ideas. But is there anything specific that we're, that you guys want to share that you're doing to be more receptive? Hearing from the students directly? Do you read the surveys? Feedback that's given, yeah. Is there one that looks bigger than others, or they're pretty much the same? Huh?
Really just a couple of them, just
Slightly different, yeah. Here's the next part, the power hoarding. How is power hoarding harmful to ourselves and our students? To me, the perfectionism, defensiveness, and the power hoarding are really tied closely together. I see them kind of feeding off of each other.
Oh,
Does anybody wonder what power hoarding means?
you want to define it for us?
It's more or less when you're saying like a hierarchical position that like, this is where I am and this is, I'm in charge and this is your role, this is my role, you're kind of calling the shots.
Cause I said so.
Because I said so. Earlier when we were talking, I said, my mom used to always say, I'm the boss, applesauce. Well, I'm the boss, you're the applesauce, that's what you would say. Power hoarding, pressure. Removing collaborativeness. Hard to express yourself. There's an element of fear maybe tied to the power hoarding. Like, you're so powerful, the great Oz has spoken, you're so afraid to look behind the curtain. That word pressure is really sticking with me because I feel like there's a lot of pressure in trying to be perfect. There's a lot of pressure in trying to be the one with, I also hear ET. You have ultimate power. So that, and then also the defensiveness, like being so afraid of being wrong or losing that power that you're trying to defend yourself. It's a lot of pressure.
I think it also is reflective of feeling threatened too, you know, it's that insecurity of if I share. I'll use that term loosely. If I share my power, my authority, then in essence, you could dethrone me, demonstrate that you're more competent, more skilled than I am, and so in order to prevent that, I'm going to keep you down. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All three of them can be oppressive, right? Not willing to listen to other people, being defensive, shooting them down, not giving space, demanding perfectionism when you know it's not obtainable, and then not allowing others to be empowered and have a say. Very oppressive. So what are some ways that you can share power with colleagues and our students? We have ask for their suggestions and implement them, invite discussion and create safety to disagree. Develop opportunities for others to gain new skills or share their growth and knowledge. Allow students time to share their thoughts, be humble, and come across as a human for your students. Honest discussion, welcome different ideas, mutual trust. Watch and learn from others and get their feedback on challenges and successes. My classrooms typically, especially if the students haven't had me, I'll ask them to. I'll tell them my main expectation is communication. I also ask them, what are your expectations of me? And if a student hasn't had me before, that's usually shocking. Because they aren't used to, like, a professor, I guess, asking them for the reversal. And I also think it's super important that first day I share with my students, like, we're gonna learn together. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, we're all learning from each other. Which is a huge shift from what I thought teaching was about when I stepped in. Anybody online want to add any comments? Ideas? Learning from others and getting their feedback on challenges and successes.
I'm gonna say that I actually have really learned a lot from the CTL workshops and the faculty fellows and things like that. Just hearing other people in terms of what they're doing in their classrooms and how to make it more successful, or this worked really well, or this was kind of a flop or something like that. I think it just sometimes hearing the stories of people is really a great way to just remind yourself to try it. And even if it's not a success the way we had hoped it would be, we learn from it. And so just to keep trying new things and be willing to challenge yourself, because sometimes I feel like it's just scary to try things that you don't know are going to work well in the class. You don't want to have that bad class day. You just want to have those really good days. And so when you try new things, sometimes it just sets you up to maybe not have a great day. But I feel like just hearing from other people about, hey, this worked really well, or it didn't work, so I went back and redid it. And, you know, I feel like those things really kind of encourage me to continue. So I feel like hearing both the challenges and successes is really important.
I agree. I would add that in my research on resilience, that was feedback given across the board from students in building resilience, the importance of hearing the stories from both professors and other students of challenges and successes, and even like failed attempts and what that felt and looked like. I think that's a really great point. Thanks for sharing. I collaborated on this last slide. Unknowingly, yes.
While you were a witch.
So Dr. Yes and I are on the DEI task force, and we're going to be starting up an affinity group, the intersectional hues of privilege, IHOP.
As long as they're pancakes there.
So if you're interested in that, please be on the lookout. When you see blueberry pancakes and rainbows.
Yeah, so here's the thing, they're like, what would you name your affinity group? And we're both talking about white dominant culture and how to dismantle systemic racism, and they're like, yes, a white culture affinity group. I'm like, So we played around with some other ideas, and I'm like, there's lots of aspects of privilege that need to be talked about, not just white privilege and advantage. And we need to talk about systems and not just, I personally didn't own any slaves and therefore I'm not racist. It's like, oh, no, stop saying that.
So you went with a trademark.
So we went with IHOP. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like pancakes.
Yeah.
Yes, I love pancakes.
It started with intersectionality of privilege, and someone said we're missing an H.
And privilege and pancakes, I think, is a way more inviting conversation.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things.
You know, at the, psychology of, you got a new name for the class.
Right.
Well, thank you all for being here and for contributing. It is greatly appreciated. Hopefully we can have more of these kinds of discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it should present every department. Right? Well, I'm going to suggest. that-
Bye,
Well, I
guys.
think that it's something for a fund, not money. Probably would suggest that. We're in